All right, today we're going to talk about what happened after Julius Caesar was assassinated. His heir, which is his great-nephew, Octavian, is really going to be mad. But before we do that, we're going to spiral back to Mesopotamia. Raise your hand if you know what are the two rivers. You know. Tigris and Euphrates. You agree? Good. What was the first writing called? Raise your hand if you know that. Cuneiform. Does everybody agree on that? What was silt? That's the easiest one. That's flood mud, isn't it? What was the first king that controlled multiple places? Sargon, you agree? Sargon of Akkad. Who wrote the first written laws? Hammurabi, wasn't it? And describe a Mesopotamian city. Now, you can't raise your hand on that. Surely you would know. It's a large city with walls. The surrounding farmland has its own government, its own religion, and its own army. Everybody agree? So, the emperors rule Rome. Our essential question is what happened after Caesar's death? Thanks again. Octavian and his buddy Mark Antony. Mark Antony was a general, and this is Caesar's grandnephew. They joined together to hunt down the murderers. So all the senators who stabbed Julius Caesar were either killed or committed suicide. So they brought justice. But think of what that did to the Senate. That's definitely going to weaken the Senate because you're going to have all these senators killed. After Caesar was assassinated, Mark Antony marries Cleopatra VII. Now this is the last Cleopatra of the Ptolemaic dynasty, and that was a big no-no. It was a big no-no to marry, it was illegal to marry someone else's wife even if they were killed in Rome. That was a huge no-no, and it really infuriates Octavian. Now these guys used to be partners. Mark Antony and Octavian were partners. But the fact that Mark Antony marries Cleopatra, that means that he wants the Ptolemaic Egypt. They're going to make a play for power. Does everybody understand that? Ptolemaic Egypt is very powerful, and they're going to try to compete with Octavian in Rome. Next. So they went to war over control over the Roman Empire. Next. Octavian versus Mark Antony. Octavian used Cleopatra and Antony's relationship as a political tool. And this takes place, the Battle of Actium. Whoever wins this battle is going to be the supreme ruler over Rome. And Octavian wins. He names himself emperor, turning Rome into an empire. One of the most influential empires the world has ever known. So this is no longer a republic. He's going to name himself as the ruler. Now, he never says, I'm an emperor. He basically says, I'm the first citizen. I'm just like everybody else. Of course, we know he wasn't. We know that he was a total ruler. During this battle, this will be Ptolemy the 15th or the 16th. Octavian defeats him, and then he defeats Mark Antony. And matter of fact, we're not quite sure, but they think they found where Cleopatra was buried. Also, the Library of Alexandria, which was supposed to contain which is supposed to contain all the ancient writings, the most famous ancient writings. The Library of Alexandria was destroyed during that. Next. Octavian soon becomes Augustus, which means exalted one. So his name is Octavian. He is renamed Augustus. Next. After Caesar's death, civil war destroyed what was left of the Republic. A second triumvirate was formed, which included Octavian and Mark Antony. Augustus wanted more power, and civil war broke out in which he led Roman legions against Mark Antony and his Egyptian allies. Augustus won and became Rome's first emperor. Octavian took the name Augustus Caesar, which means exalted one, and that ended the Roman Republic. Everybody pretty clear on that? Next. So the causes of the decline in the Roman Republic. Why did the Roman Republic fall? We talked a little bit about it yesterday. The spread of slavery, and remember we watched our movie about Tiberius Granicus? The spread of slavery led the rich to get much richer, and they took land from everyone else. You're going to have migration of small farmers into the city, which they were unemployed. Y'all remember the apartment building they were in, which how terrible it was? Representative government was unsuited for governing a large empire, and the Civil War broke out because of Julius Caesar's assassination. Now, go to sleep, are you? We're going to sleep on the exalted one. Next. Augustus builds Rome. Augustus became Rome's first emperor, used the title as first citizen. And it's like he didn't use the title of emperor, although he was the emperor. He controlled provinces, strengthened defenses, began civil service. He beautified Rome, building temples, theaters, and monuments. What Caesar Augustus said was when he came into power, Rome was a city of brick, and he will leave it a city of marble. He just beautified the city. Next. Augustus' reign began the Pax Romana. This is another one of our 6th grade vocabulary terms, just like dynasty, legalism, monotheism. Pax Romana. Obviously, one word is Roman, right? It means Roman peace. It's the Roman peace. There's a period of about 200 years where there's no civil wars. Now, does that mean that the Roman Empire was peaceful? No, of course not. But there was no real civil wars. The Roman army of 300,000 men became the greatest fighting force in the world. Their army guarded frontiers, built roads, then the navy patrolled the sea. Next. Strong economy. The Pax Romana continued after Augustus' death in AD 14. The peace lasted for 200 years. We're going to talk more about that tomorrow. The empire thrived under government begun by Augustus. What a crazy idea. Peace equals prosperity. Guys, when you're not at constant war, your economy can grow and thrive. You know, we have seen that in this country. 4 years ago, we had an administration that didn't lead us in war, and we had the greatest economy. Now, warfare always hurts your economy. Few emperors now during the Pax Romana were totally insane, such as Caligula and Nero, but for the most part, Pax Romana was period Roman peace. Next. The Romans produced pottery, metal goods, glass, wine, olive oil. Land and sea trade routes aided economic growth. The Romans traded with Spain, Africa, Western Asia, and Gaul, which is what we know called France. Traders brought back grain, ivory, silk, spices, gold, silver. Currency. Roman economy. The Roman Empire was united by their economy. They all used the same type of coins. And we're going to end with these. So as we say in my class, go forth and learn, because knowledge is power.